The tension in the hearing room could be cut with a knife. Overhead lights glared down like interrogation lamps, catching on the polished brass nameplates before each figure seated at the long mahogany table. On one side sat Kash Patel, shoulders squared, voice sharp, the embodiment of smug certainty. On the other sat Jasmine Crockett, draped in crisp white, calm and unreadable. Cameras rolled, reporters whispered, and somewhere beyond the security checkpoint, America watched this live. Broadcast with held breath. Patel leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice dipped in contempt. She may look the part, but she's simply unfit. Emotionally, intellectually, constitutionally. The room flinched, not in loud protest, but in stunned silence. Crockett did not blink. Her fingers didn't flinch. Her hands remained folded as if she were in prayer or mourning. Then, like a whisper breaking tension, she slid a small flash drive across the table. "Then I hope you're ready to listen," she said quietly, her voice cool steel beneath velvet. "Because America's watching," Patel scoffed. The chairperson cleared his throat. But even as the procedural chatter resumed, none noticed the screen behind them flickering to life. A single audio file began to play. Soft, sinister, unmistakably damning. Months before this hearing, Jasmine Crockett had been warned, not overtly, not in words, but in how quickly her name disappeared from legislative drafts, in how her microphone suddenly malfunctioned during key sessions, in how committee chairs spoke over her as though she were ornamental. Behind closed doors, she had become a target, intelligent, unbending, and inconvenient. When she first raised her voice about discriminatory conduct within the committee, she was accused of being combative. Later, when she documented those actions, the documents themselves were redacted beyond recognition. There were late nights spent in silence with her legal pad, drawing patterns between disappearing evidence and the rise of Patel's influence. An intern, a black woman fresh out of college, had shown up at her office, shaken and close to tears. "They erased your question from the record," she whispered, like it was never asked. A former staffer confirmed it weeks later. Journalist with a conscience handed her a sealed envelope containing edited transcripts. But what changed everything came not from a file, but a friend, a loyal staff member with access to Patel's off-record conversations, had recorded a moment of unguarded cruelty. In the audio, Patel laughed casually, saying, "Let her make noise. Jasmine's optics for the diversity checklist, nothing more." It was enough. But Crockett wasn't interested in revenge, only truth. She built a careful timeline, verified every statement, and waited for the moment the world would be forced to listen. And now it had arrived. The hearing was the stage, and Patel, still unaware, had handed her the opening. The file began to play across the wide screen behind the witness table. For a second, Patel's brow furrowed. He turned in his seat. The voice echoed across the chamber. His voice, his words, his laughter. "She's got no bite," the recording said. "Just another diversity hire." Patel's expression cracked. His mouth moved, but no sound came. The room fell into stunned silence. Even the air seemed to withdraw. Jasmine remained still, not out of pride, but purpose. She had waited, not with fury, but discipline. Now, truth walked the halls in surround sound. The committee chair froze. The aides turned white. Patel glanced toward his counsel, silent, unmoving. A single word, unfit, returned to him like a ghost in the room. "She's got no bite," the voice on the recording repeated. "Just another diversity hire. Let her play politician. It keeps the activists busy." Jasmine breathed in slowly. Her eyes trained on no one. She didn't need to explain. The evidence had spoken, not edited, not taken out of context. Just the truth, undeniable and ugly. Patel tried to speak, but his voice faltered. "This is taken out of context. This is a violation of legal." "You said I was unfit," Jasmine interrupted, voice low and unshaken. "But I've been the only one playing by the rules. Reporters scribbled furiously. Phones were raised. Even the aides shifted in their seats, unsure whether to stand by their former leader or quietly recede. The committee chair cleared his throat again, but the room no longer belonged to him. Patel sat frozen. The power he had once wielded with condescension dissolved in the air. The smirk that had colored his earlier attack was gone, replaced by blank panic. The corner of his mouth twitched involuntarily, and a bead of sweat rolled past his temple. Jasmine looked at no one in particular as she rose to gather her things. She didn't wait for the ruling. She didn't need to. She'd delivered hers. And as she walked out, the echo of her restraint was louder than any gavel. 100 headlines were already forming. But for Crockett, justice wasn't a headline. It was a wound she refused to let scar over until it was seen by all. The next morning, Patel's name trended not for his leadership, but for his fall. News cycles replayed the audio on a loop. Commentators who once supported him shifted their tone, calling for investigations and resignations. 3 committee members quietly recused themselves from further sessions. By the end of the week, Patel had stepped down, pending further inquiry. Jasmine Crockett did not gloat. There were no victory interviews, no rehearsed statements. She returned to her office, accepted the messages of support, and answered none. That was not her purpose. At home, she sat on the floor of her modest apartment and watched a clip of the hearing, not for the words, but for the silence. The silence when the recording played. The silence after she spoke. Silence that had once been used to erase her now echoed with her presence. In the shadowed quiet of his D.C. townhouse, Patel sat alone, phone screen lit with unread texts. One by one, donors pulled out. His colleagues stopped replying. A neighbor walked by his window and didn't wave. He opened his inbox. The last email from his daughter read, "You embarrassed us." He stared at it, unmoving. Meanwhile, at a youth summit in Dallas, a teenage girl stood at the podium, voice trembling but rising. "My voice matters," she said. "And I'm not too loud. I'm just not quiet anymore." From the back row, Jasmine watched, unseen. She smiled, not out of satisfaction, but hope. They wanted me quiet, she thought, walking away as the applause thundered. But dignity isn't silence, and justice isn't polite. And somewhere, far from cameras and microphones, systems began to shift, not from noise, but from one undeniable truth spoken at the right moment, with the whole world watching.